thank you, Soleyana and Hamrawit, for coming here to our studio to have a conversation on Ethiopia.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and start with the current situation in Ethiopia. Just want your thought and perspective. What do you think?
Am I gonna start?
Go ahead. Start.
Yeah, I mean, things are really changing fast in the last couple of months. I guess they have been changing for almost like a couple of years, but like the results are being seen now in the last couple of months. Most of them are overwhelmingly positive, so I guess that's the first thing everybody would say at this point. And then I really hope there are a lot of changes coming and they're going to be positive. So if things go with this speed, and then if they keep going with this like pace, I think we're going to see a lot of positive things coming back from back home. So that's the general assessment that I have.
Great. How about you?
Yes, I do agree with what Soleyana said. I am very hopeful of what's happening in our country. I think we're seeing some really positive changes. I can add, this is something completely unexpected. This is beyond my imagination, but from the moment that I have seen the Prime Minister make his first speech, I've become very hopeful about what's going on, and it's increasing day by day by what he's doing.
Okay. There's two type of thoughts or camps right now. One that are saying it's great that what we need is evolution, not necessarily revolution, to change the political situation in Ethiopia. And there are other school of thought that are saying we want deep structural change. We want complete change the government and start a new transitional government. Which side do you think has a viable option right now?
I mean, like, given the current situation, it's so hard to say, like, oh, like, we're gonna have transitional government next month, or you could, like, it's very difficult to say, we're gonna change radically what's going on in some radical way, because there's some thought, like, we need radical change, like, these reforms are gonna be, like, small amendments that would keep, like, the regime going. But I think one of the important things that we should be, in my opinion, is, like, being pragmatic about like what is the possible option that we have at hand, and then what are the possible ways that we can push for further change, like to materialize some of the things that has been started. So I don't see, in my opinion, I don't see any favorable situation to have a transitional government. It's impossible to get one, because like there is no need, and honestly speaking, there is no demand for transitional government from the local people who are being asking this question. People had been like asking for freedom, democracy, and then other questions that they had been asking, and whosoever brought that, if those changes come to the country, I don't think like there should be a conversation who brought that and who thought about these things. So the first thing is that. The second thing is like, politically speaking, you need to have like a favorable situations to call for transitional government, like there should be like a whole-wide regime change, need demand from the people, and then there should be viable political actors to take part in that, and so on. And I don't think those things are really fulfilled in Ethiopia. So I guess, in my opinion, what we need to stick with is trying to push the current government to implement the promises that they started to give since the inauguration of Prime Minister Abiy. And then there had been some reform of opinions he has been giving. He talked about renewing and then also repealing laws and amending laws that has been like used to attack political dissents, journalists, and other political actors in the country. So we need to push on that and make sure that like those laws are really changed. He promised reform in the justice system and the security system, and then we need to push for that and then see if those changes can be implemented. He also promised about like the change in civil society proclamation, so that more civil society activities organizing Article 30 of the Constitution is going to be implemented. So we need to push on that. If we keep pushing on this and then like make sure that his promises are going to be implemented, I guess it's not going to be very difficult to get back to where we were, at least like in the earlier days of EPRD, so that we can have better press, we can have like better opposition parties organized and then operate and so on.
Excellent. Any thoughts, Hamrawit?
I think they, two of them, they go together. This is paving a way towards structural change. because we have to look at, sometimes when we look at the problem that has been created by this government, we just look at the structural problems. But also the biggest problem that most people have not seen is the intentional division that it has created amongst the people. And most people, especially politicians, are not looking at that. There has been intentional division that has created division among our people. People did not feel like they belong together anymore. And this was intentionally done by the government. So the new prime minister has had a big role in trying to bring that together and trying to heal that and trying to fix that. Because without that, even if there was a structural change, if there's division amongst people, if there's a sense of not oneness among people, if there's misunderstanding, it's not going to work, and people are not looking at that. So that's a very important healing and fixing part of our society, and people are not looking at that. And I see that slowly and gradually it's leading towards structural change. But the thing is, the country first has to stabilize itself before we even go to structural change. Because before this prime minister came, there were so many forces that were trying to divide the country for their own, they had their own intention, they might think it's good or not good, but there were so many forces that were trying to divide the country, you know what I mean? On the other hand, there were forces that were saying, the country is united, but they were not bringing a stable way in which the country can be united, But so he's trying to do this big job that hasn't been done.
Yes, I agree with you. I think he set in a motion where we can entertain all this reforms that we want to see in our country. My other question would be, do you think Ethiopia will go beyond identity politics, and can we heal as a nation and create a stable political system?
I mean, identity politics is not something that came with EPRD.
Mm-hmm.
It has been always there. But of course, I agree it gives a political space with EPRD. Before that, it was not a winning political ideology, but once EPRDF came up with identity politics, ethnic politics, it became like an ideology of the ruling party. And then so that it gets more space, gets more discussion and so on. But my understanding in general about Ethiopia is especially now, it's so hard to avoid or to skip anything related with ethnicity and then assume that, everything's gonna be okay and fix it. That's one hurdle we need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And then as long as we don't fix it, it's gonna keep there. That's what happened in the last 100 years. And then even if we count from the time where this has been a discussion, the students movement in 1960s, and then it was there and it's still now. It's not because some people wanted it to be there, it's because the question is already there. So my understanding is that unless we solve this and then pass to the next level, whatever level that we agree and come up with, it's just difficult to skip that and then avoid that and then say we're one and we're gonna do it this way. So I guess it's an elephant in the room, it's a white elephant in the room, and then the problem is how EPRDF dealt with it might not be helpful. It was not helpful for the public, it was not helpful for the people, and then it's very important to ensure that dealing with ethnic politics, the issue of marginalization, the issue of identity should be dealt, but in a way that would be helpful for everyone, that would be helpful for every ethnic group from the peripheries, from different color, from different language, from different culture, but coming together and say that they really belong from their culture, but at the same time they belong to Ethiopia. So unless we solve that path and then we discuss about it, and it's so hard to just skip that part and say we're one and we're gonna keep as one. That's my first point. But my other point is, as I said earlier, how we deal with it might not be the same as the EPRDF dealt with it, or might not be as a recommendation that has been given for long. So once we get the democracy, once we get the space, once we get the freedom of expression, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of ideas coming how to deal with these things. most of the elites are not even there on the platform now to give recommendations on how are we going to deal with our problems. We don't even know what are our current problems, and then how's their levels with no one researched about it. So I guess having a space to organize, having a space to talk, having a space for freedom of expression will give us an opportunity like to learn how to deal with these things, to learn how these things are happening, how it's going on, and then how to deal and heal with this process and become a nation, one nation. So I guess that's why it's really important to push for better political space, for democracy and freedom of expression, because it's going to help us to solve our other problems, including the identity and ethnicity.
Good. About Hamrawit. Do you think we'll be able to go beyond identity politics? The past, like Soleyana mentioned, that identity politics has always been there, but it has not addressed properly. Do you think Ethiopia can go beyond, at some point in the future, can go beyond identity politics?
Definitely, but the thing is we have to bring it to the front and heal it. We have to bring it, it's not something that we can just pretend that it's not there. We have to bring to the front and heal it. In our country, I think the way it has been is there has been two extreme sides, and those two extreme sides has wanted it to be their way or no way, and they have not tried to listen to each other. I used to be from one extreme side, which I used to think, because I looked at everything based on my own background and the way I was raised. So, which I was raised in Addis, I did not know anything about the importance of ethnic identity or anything. It was not mentioned in my home. So I thought Ethiopia is one, that's all that matters. When you talk about your ethnicity and everything, that means there's something wrong with you. You're trying to distance away from ethnicity, from Ethiopia. So, and then that's when I found out that it took me a long time when I finally saw there are people whose identity matters a lot to them, but they still love Ethiopia, and we can bring those together. And that our country's history has not been all good. We can pretend, I know it has been all good, but it's not about, if somebody feels like it has not been good to them, at least we have to acknowledge what they say. I might not agree, I might say the fact is not it, but I have to acknowledge before we come together. I think there was one guy who said, we had a meeting one time, and he said, I remember he said, you can't tell your wife she's ugly and still want to marry her, or something like that, We cannot, and we can't say to somebody, say, no, you don't matter, your identity doesn't matter, and still say you are an Ethiopian. We have to acknowledge each other's pain. We have to listen to each other. We have to, like my sister said, we have to acknowledge that big elephant in the room. We need a real healing. On the same hand, though, we need to understand unity is our strength. We need to understand, because there are people who want to use this wanting identity for their own good of separating our people, for their own good of bringing hatred amongst our people, bringing fear, distrust among each other, anger among each other. There are groups and individuals who try to do that in all tribes, and we have to be on a lookout for those type of people. I'm talking about their intention. Their intention is not to bring healing and unity, but it's to bring division for their own good. So that type of force is not going to work. So we have to bring both of this together and listen to each other. There is not one identity of what Ethiopia is. Ethiopia is on coming together, talking together, healing together. It's not about my Ethiopia, it's our Ethiopia.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, actually. One of the things that I want to add is, there's a very interesting part of it, because it's so complex. There are also other forces who uses Ethiopia as one, and then using unity as a way forward, but why they're not recognizing our diversity inside. So I think both sides who uses our division for their intent, but also there are other people who uses unity as their intent to impose, to not recognize the importance of like our diversity with them. So I think it's from both ways, and that's why it makes it really complex. Mm-hmm. Whenever you say from one point of view, the other point of view is against you, and then whenever you say from the other point of view, this side of it is against you. Yes. So yeah, and that makes it the conversation difficult, that makes the healing difficult, that makes the way forward difficult. But it's very important like to have conversations like these things are really complex and they need complex solutions, and it doesn't have like one fit solution, like this is the way and that's what we're going to do this.
Thank you.
actually, when we talk about this, I also want to add, this is something we have to face. If we're going to want a healed Ethiopia, we have to even look at now lately what I hear is a very negative thinkings about Tigrayans. And with that type of thinking, we cannot bring Ethiopia together because it's the same type of thinking that has bring destruction to our country. We have said it before. We have said all Amaras are like that because of a ruling party. And the same thing we're doing now, all Tigrayans are like that because of a ruling. We are succumbing to what they have taught us the same way. If I don't like to be labeled based on my ethnicity, I should not do that to others as well. There is a difference between a ruling party and people, because I cannot say those Tigrayans are like that and claim that I am against this government, because I'm exactly acting like them when I say that. If we're going to bring reconciliation, if we say one Ethiopia, we have to realize that a ruling party does not represent the actual people. It's everybody is responsible to this type of healing.
Let's take a break and we'll be back in a few minutes. Back from our break, we see that reforms are happening right now by leadership of Prime Minister Ali. And if both of you were asked to advise the opposition party inside and outside Ethiopia, what would you advise them now?
Please may not start that with me.
I'll start with you.
Okay, so if I have to advise the
Opposition party inside and outside Ethiopia. Opposition party.
Let me start with the outside.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of opinion. No, really, what I would say is there is a big difference between being motivated for your love for your country, or being motivated for the hatred you have for your enemy. Because when you are motivated for the love for your country, all you do is what would bring stability to my country. When that is the force that motivates you, you see clearly whatever is bringing stability to my country, I will support. It's not about me, it's not about my anger, it's not about what I went through, it's not about my hatred, it's about that big picture, what brings stability. But when you are motivated by anger or hatred or fear of your enemy, all what you're trying to do is to fighting and bringing force, right? So what they need to see is look at the big picture. What is bringing stability and what's bringing justice to my people. When you are motivated by that force, you would support to anyone who is trying to bring that type of stability to our country. Right? So that's what they need to look at, and they need to stop. Sometimes some of the oppositions, I feel like they are addicted to being opposition, just they're addicted to opposing somebody just for the sake of opposing. It's like they're trying to find, what is it that I should find to oppose? And I'm like, okay, what's your intention here? Is it just to oppose, or is it to help your country and your people? So, we have to be very clear, because somebody put it so nice, and I was like, wow, this is so good. For some, people who are used to opposing, that has become their identity. So all of a sudden, it's like, who am I? If I can, it's like, like when they say, oh, if I'm not opposing, then who am I? So they cannot live without opposing. Wake up, this is a time of change. Of course, if there's something to oppose, that's something else. But get on the bus, try to say, what am I going to do to help my people? Because as far as what I'm seeing is, this Prime Minister is trying his best to bring unity to my people, to bring peace to my people, to fight that ethnic division that has been in our country. You know, to bring a real change. And our job should not be how am I going to try to fight them. Our job should be how am I going to support those that are trying to bring good things to our country. So, yeah.
Excellent. Great. I have a great admiration for both of you because, first of all, you're active in your community and you participate in our country's social movement. And I think I believe that one of the biggest assets that Ethiopia has not capitalized is the role of its women. Our mothers, sisters really were the fabric and the core foundation of our country, and I don't see a lot of women being active in politics and social movements, and you two demonstrated that. So what kind of advice do you give for all those there's a lot of educated, active, intelligent women in Ethiopia and outside Ethiopia in our community? What kind of advice do you give them at this current situation?
I think I will come from the social perspective, starting from the parenting and the social. I think parents should encourage their girls to let them know, you can contribute. They need to show them, just like your brother, you can contribute. You can become somebody. You don't have to be a status quo. You're not limited, because our society has not only our society, in the world society has continually pulled us and told us we're defined by a certain thing that was made for us. So parents should teach their children, their girls, you can be somebody. You can excel. And so I think that starts that. And our society also has to encourage our girls. It has to encourage our women. And as women, we have to support each other. As women, because we cannot just expect that from men. We have to support each other, because in the past, the type of oppression that has on women was more, you cannot do this, you can't do this, you're not equal to men. Now the type of oppression also that we have as women is you're defined by your looks, you are defined by how you're shaped, and this, and so many girls fall for that, and so many intelligent girls who can be somebody, they limit themselves to their outside exterior beauty, and society reflects that, and this comes mostly from the West as well. And we need to teach our girls, and as women we need to realize, our identity is not defined by what we see on the outside. We need to cooperate together, stop competing with each other, and try to uplift each other, because women are solution makers. Women can contribute a lot to our society, and I think it's about time that more women leaders come out in our society.
Soleyana?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complex problem that women face. So whenever I get a question about women political participation, my answer is, let alone women, main political participation is really limited in Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
And then given the other burden that the woman has, you have social expectation to meet, you have family expectation to meet. You're also expected to be independent and to raise your own income, but at the same time be the woman that is expected to be. So the burden is obviously more stronger on women.
Mm-hmm.
And then I understand and I recognize every woman passes through this challenge every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So the solution is, in my opinion, and trying to give the space for women so that there are so many women who can be exemplary, and then I'm sure there are a lot of achievers who are really independent, and then who really defied all those challenges that Hamrawit has mentioned, and then I guess giving an opportunity for them would show that there are a lot of women out there, and because I sometimes feel there are only women, few women who are really visible, but they are as much capable as other women who are not really speaking about it, or who are not really out there. And then I always assume if my mom get an opportunity, she's a badass feminist, and I wouldn't be here at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess then that's what I meant to say, even an opportunity for other women would open the space, and then will make us see a lot of more role model women. And the other thing is, as she said, sisterhood is really important, showing sisterhood, and then trying to encourage others with whatsoever they do and whatsoever they choose, like to make sure that like it helps them and then ensure that that's their independent choice will be also a way forward. But in general, it's so complex. The situation in Ethiopia is not even in a fancy level of the struggle, fancy in quotation. I mean, we're still talking about rape, we're still talking about like acid attack, we're still talking about like being sexually attacked while we walk on the street. I mean, these are the basic questions for women, and then like you cannot even argue about like how women are being competitive or they're changing social structure and so on. So these questions are really basics, and we're at the basics level. So I understand that it's gonna take a while for us like to get the women's struggle some way, and then as the Prime Minister recognized, surprisingly, he recognizes again and again that like you cannot just let the 50% of your population like down there and then just change the country. So it's very important. And by the way, I have mentioned it somewhere else also, like it's very good to have a head of state mention the women's cause in Ethiopia as one of his priorities on his inauguration speech, which is very important. Like it might not even change policies like at large level, but the symbolic idea of like having the women cause as one of the causes, because like in given the complex situation that we had been in Ethiopia, no one would expect him to say like the woman question as also a priority, because like it was very unstable. There had been a lot of political instability, so like having those women question to be included as one of the priorities had been a very uplifting experience. So I guess even though it might not change like direct policy implications, it's really very, very significant symbolic like gesture, and then it reminds other people that like they should include such kind of things in on their day-to-day conversations and speech and so on. So I think that should be recognized, and then if we can get such kind of recognition in the political side, the practical things are gonna follow soon. But like it's gonna take a while.
I think it will get there faster because we have a lot of capable women in Ethiopia.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you for having this conversation with me. I appreciate it. It was insightful thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Africa!